So I fully expect this to be the highlight of the entire conference, Martin. You know, if you don't know who this gentleman is, you should. He is an inspiration to me because he is obviously a very successful businessman, but he is one of the most successful Latino business people that I know that is passionate about our community at just the highest level. So Martin, thank you for being here.
It's great to be here, Gary.
So I know you very well. Audience doesn't know you very well. Let's start off by just very quickly, tell us about yourself, kind of your journey, and a little bit about your company right now.
Sure. So we are an investment bank and institutional brokerage firm, also real estate development group, and we're headquartered in Chicago, but we have about 8 offices around the country. We got the Chicago contingency out there, and also we have an office in London. And we underwrite debt for corporations and municipalities, and that's what really helped us get into the development space, understanding how to build a capital stack to finance some of these projects, residential and commercial as well. And it allowed us to go into the development side and the real estate kind of money management side. So we've been fortunate and blessed and growing the business and growing different developments kind of here in the States.
So you grew up in Chicago?
Yes, Southwest side.
You grew up wealthy?
Extremely wealthy. No, I'm just kidding. We used to joke that we're broke as the 10 Commandments. So we grew up in a little village, so we didn't even realize that we were poor, I think, until I was in high school, and I went out to a suburb, and I saw these great big houses, and looked nothing like our house. And look, we struggled, and we're probably behind the rent and mortgage payments, kind of a couple months, but I think it was great. I wouldn't trade that for the world because it caused me to learn perseverance, but also grit and get knocked down a lot and tough environments and not having things handed to you. You have to earn them. You got to work hard, extra hard, harder than other folks. And that kind of pays dividends. And actually even growing up playing sports, which also helped me out to compete. And it was something that really helped change who I was as a businessman, but also kind of what I wanted to do. It's like I wanted to be successful. And one thing about kind of being poor, and I think for every poor person, it's like, you know, you don't like being poor and you want to change it. Yeah. And there's different opportunities out there, and it's great. That's, you know, for NAREP and for this conference, even at Latitude, it's great to see so many successful Latinos. It's like we're here and we're going to take over too.
Amen. Martin, you talked about the work ethic that Latinos tend to have, and you're part of that. And I don't think anybody denies the work ethic of the Latino community. We are workers. But we haven't always had what I describe as an ownership mentality. We have a worker's mentality. We don't necessarily have that ownership mentality. Somewhere along the lines, you acquired that perception. You own a very successful investment banking firm, which is remarkable. What gave you the chutzpah, the vision, to be able to pursue a career like that?
I think it was actually both of my grandfathers. I just did a recent kind of interview for the LA Times. And my grandfather was born just outside of LA. And he was about 12 years old in 1930, and there was a Mexican repatriation. So they were saying that the Mexicans were taking all the jobs. So they put him in a boxcart, and they shipped him out to Mexico.
I remember that. Yeah.
To hear his stories, he wasn't angry about it. He would just talk about it, and he said it wasn't just Mexicans, it was Japanese that were in the boxcart as well, the train
literally
that were going down to Mexico. And my other grandfather crossed the Rio Grande, and he was on his brother-in-law's back, and he put on a suit so that he could cross over, crouched over on his brother-in-law's back, so he'd only get his feet wet so he can get a job when he came to the U.S., and that they wouldn't think that he was illegal. But I think about all of the struggles that they went through to provide a better opportunity for like my father and then my mother. And that's what inspires me, that all the hard work and the love and dedication for family is that we can bring that same mentality of hard work, but also competitive spirit in sports and be the best. And I know I love going up against JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and B of A, and they're probably out in the audience too. And we compete against them. Sometimes we beat them, but sometimes we're working with them in some relationships as well. But it does make you want to up your game and go and compete, and that there are no limits in what you can do. And we work on deals here in the States, also in Europe, in Asia, and Latin America as well. And there is no limits. And that's a great thing about our community, that we're going to break the glass ceiling, but keep on going and keep on pushing. And it's just important that we pull our other Latinos up as well and show them the way and how to do it.
100%, 100%. I want to get to that in a second, but you know the data better than I do. Latinos have been historically and continue to be what I describe as prolific entrepreneurs. We have that in our DNA. I think one of the data points that's in a number of reports, our Hispanic Wealth Report, for example, says that Latinos are actually almost twice as likely as the overall population to own a small business. However, the high majority of those businesses are very small, and very rarely do they achieve scale, right? So we have our business, we do well, we work hard, but we don't necessarily evolve that business a whole lot, historically. And I think a lot of that has to do with knowledge gaps and relationships and maybe access to capital, but we need to break that cycle a little bit. So that's a passion of yours, and you and I have been talking a little bit about how we can help the NAREP network evolve their businesses. Most of them here, about 2/3 of our members are real estate agents and brokers. A lot of them are very successful. The rest come from the finance, kind of mortgage banking industry. What's the next iteration of what they do, in your view, that they should be looking at least and considering?
So I think when there's all of these opportunities out there, and I know there's a lot of residential brokers out there, but even how do we get Latinos into the commercial brokerage side of things? And where the fees are much larger as well. And I think there's opportunities to partner with some of the firms. And one thing we might want to consider, how do we bring in the Cushman Wakefields and the CBREs to invite them to Latitude? Because all of those residential brokers, they're representing those individuals to buy their houses, but those individuals also have grocery stores and construction companies and engineering companies, and they're going to go out there and look for industrial kind of lots as well and buildings that they want to go and purchase. But it's really, how do we make that conversion? And it may be through partnerships initially so that we learn the business and how we can scale it. But I think also you're seeing the office market has been decimated. You're going to start to see a lot more of those offices be converted into residential kind of apartments.
Yeah, we're seeing that, yeah.
And I think that's an opportunity for our Latino community to get involved and start participating as well, because they're all in the major cities as well where we have a lot of density. But I think that's where you're going to see some great opportunities and to take advantage of those opportunities.
And people should, and there's a number of ways that people could pursue that, and I think it's on us as an organization to start providing education around that, workshops and so forth, and I think we're going to do that, and we need to do a better job with that. But I think that's right. I think the industry itself is evolving as well. Residential real estate is going through massive transformation right now. And people are always going to need homes. That's never going to change. People are always going to want to buy those homes. I call homeownership the gateway to the middle class, but I call business ownership, and I'm talking about scaled business ownership, as the pathway to prosperity, right? So we've got to be thinking about both. So let's pivot a little bit. You and I were together a couple weeks ago in the Hamptons. You invited me to a very unique event that included Latino business leaders and Jewish business leaders. And we were having very open dialogue about how we can learn from each other, how we can collaborate better. You know, the Jewish community has done a lot of great things from a prosperity standpoint. And it wasn't because anybody necessarily invited them to the to the ball game, so to speak, they learned to work together and collaborate. And they would give and I heard them, we talked about this, you need a summer job, call me up, I'll give your son a summer job. They kept that money in the community until they achieved a certain sort of level of prosperity. You have actual data about that. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that data point, because it was eye-popping for me when you mentioned that.
I think for me, when I look at our Latino community and I look at like Martin, what's your dream for your Latino community? And it would be for us to emulate that of the Jewish community in the sense that they are working together, they're supporting one another, they're helping their kids, they're helping strangers in their community, but for education, for business. And that is something that I want to see in our community. And one of the things I did when I was part of an organization, New America Alliance, and this is early 2002, we sent our executive director from this Latino business organization to Israel for a month. And we asked her to be there, study politics, business, culture, religion, arts, everything, and come back and compare them to our US Latino community. And there were a lot of statistics that she came back with, but the one that really stuck with me is that the Jewish community will do business with each other 13 times before the dollar ever leaves their community. And then it'll come back. But in the Latino community, we only do business with each other once, and then the dollar leaves, but it never comes back. And we can't expect ourselves to grow as a community unless we are supporting one another and doing business with one another like they are. And sometimes it's hard. I try to practice what I preach as well, even for our development. It's about a $550 million development. But I have Latino lobbyists, Latino attorneys, Latino architects, Latino engineers, Latino construction companies. And they're just great firms. They just happen to be Latino. I've got white and black firms too participating in there. But it's something that is meaningful for me so that they get those opportunities. And we have to be intentional about keeping those dollars and helping our community grow as well, because we are viewed as the consumers, but not as entrepreneurs. And that's where we have to change the mindset for some of these major CEOs. When I go and sit down with them and tell them I want a $4 billion deal, and they're looking at me, it's like, what, you want business from us? It's like, yeah, I'm not looking for any charity or donations for a non-for-profit. It's like, we want business. And being clear about what we can provide for them, the value that we add, and how we perform, because we will work our tail off to go above and beyond everyone else to make sure we're doing a great job for our clients.
Yeah, it's incredible, and he does do that, trust me. Martin is one of those that practices what he preaches. I write a blog every Sunday. Some of the people here read it. And I've written a couple blogs that got, a lot of response, and not all of it was great. One of the blogs that I wrote is rule number 1, thou shalt not badmouth publicly other Latinos, right? Another blog that I wrote was nobody makes it on their own, right? And those are following the thematic that we're talking about right here. So number 1, obviously there's Latinos that do things that deserve criticism. But we don't necessarily have to be the first ones out there to be articulating that criticism. And what I mean is we kind of have to have each other's back. We got to give each other the benefit of the doubt. We got to find ways to look beyond just the superficial and do what Martin just described. I hear people all the time saying, nobody helped me. Why should I help somebody else? They actually say that to me. There's no way that that's true. I don't care where you are. I don't care how you think you were able to achieve the success that you have. Trust me, somebody, or actually probably several people along the way, had they not emerged in your life at that time, had they not agreed to do business with you, had they not mentored you a little bit, you would not be where you are today. So when you talk about paying it forward and making that part of our culture, our business culture, that part of what we do is to, hey, pull somebody else up, right? That's just part of what we do. That's gonna change the paradigm. That's gonna change the cycle that, frankly, has held us back for a little bit too long. It's time to start collaborating. We're at that point right now. We're ready for prime time. I know I'm preaching, and I'm preaching to the choir, but I can't help myself.
I think, Gary, and I listen to those podcasts, so they're good. I enjoy them. And part of it is this Latino crab syndrome that we have to be intentional about changing. And, there's people that are going to do bad things, Latinos and non-Latinos, but I think if we focus on the great things that we're doing and supporting one another, that is something that is going to move markets. When we come together, it doesn't matter whether they're Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, Colombian.
And that's extremely important that we don't draw lines there.
And I use the example, and I take some Starbucks straws or the little stirrers, and with about 5 of them, you could crack them pretty easy. But when you put 40 of them together, you cannot break them. And that's how we have to be as a Latino community, to stick together in good times, but also in bad times. When somebody is going through a difficult time, I've invested in some other Latino companies, and they'll apologize, Martin, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to file for bankruptcy. I'm gonna have to close down the business, and you're not gonna get a return on your money. I was like, look, I'm a big boy, I understand. It's think about what's the next business you're gonna start up. Dust yourself off, shake it off. In the Jewish community, they're like, what's the next business? What's the next business? And not that it's, a negative thing, it's part of business, but you learn from it. But we have to be there to support one another, to make sure we're doing business with one another and giving them opportunities as well. I've been in very tough times where I thought I was gonna close my business, and I had other people who I didn't really think that would come to my support who did. And they were non-Latinos. But I appreciate that, and I know I have to be there for other folks as well to try to support them during difficult times, but also give them some good feedback too on what they can do to get better. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's really what this is all about. This conversation was the conversation that I was looking forward to the most, because it's what's going to change that cycle. Where did you go to business school? Did you go to business school?
I didn't. I went to Northern Illinois University in about an hour outside of Chicago. So one day I will go back. It's on my bucket list.
So the reason I asked that question, and I'm just staying on this theme for one more sort of anecdote. Do you know Gary Trujillo?
Yes.
Yeah, so Gary Trujillo told me this story, and Gary went to the Harvard Business School. And when he got into the Harvard Business School, he told me that he didn't want anybody at Harvard to think that he got into Harvard Business School because he was Latino. And he didn't want any favors or any sort of advantages that were being sort of granted to other Latinos per se. I made it on my own. And he says, when I got there, he says, I met all these blue bloods that come from wealthy families that had no shame in using every contact relationship that their dad had or their uncle had or their friend had to help them any way that they could. And he thought, why am I not doing that? Why am I not using every asset that's available to me? And that is also an issue that we gotta kind of get past, right? Being Latino right now is actually an asset in a lot of different levels.
It's our superpower.
It's our superpower. So don't be stupid and think you should pretend that that's not a superpower or an asset for you. Use it, leverage it, take advantage of it. So I want you to know one other thing about Martin, and I'm going to let you kind of finish things. But Martin also raises money to build stadiums and playing fields for major projects. This is a gentleman that's going to be an NFL owner someday. Mark my words. He's incredibly smart, successful. He has all the pieces, and he's making the right connections. And I'm just enjoying watching your journey, Martin.
From your lips to God's ears, but I think It's more so what we can do. And sometimes, look, we're very humble as a Latino community, but we can go and knock on doors, but sometimes we need to kick them down and just go and take it.
That's right.
So,
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
thank you, Gary.